All right, Bella, we're going to switch on our live cameras in Moscow where something is happening. Steve Hurst, our Moscow Bureau Chief, is there. Steve?
Yes, I'm standing here with Eileen O'Connor, my fellow correspondent here in Moscow. We've heard a lot of automatic weapons fire in just the last couple of minutes. Pock, 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 pock. And now we can hear in the distance crowds chanting. There is a light that's come on at the far right side of the Russian Federation building. And there have been reports, unconfirmed reports, that a column of tanks was moving through the first layer of barricades on the outside of the back of that building. Eileen, what did you see when you were last there?
Well, on the outer perimeters of the building, there's several layers of tank barricades. Those tanks are loyal to Boris Yeltsin and to the Russian Federation. Also, within those tank barricades, there are about 4 layers of human barricades, made mainly by men linking arms close together. Within those barricades are also wooden makeshift barricades with broken glass, nails, planks of wood, wire, also very long and pointy, sharp metal stakes. Those are all along the entrances and any approach to the Russian Federation building, including along a back garden, which, if the reports are accurate, those would be some of those barricades that they might have been approaching at least.
Lou, we've also seen some lights flashing on and off, I'm told, over the Kremlin. But I think the most worrisome, aside from the gunfire, of course, which is very worrisome, the most worrisome sign is this light, which appears to be a military spotlight that is shining from some distance on the Russian Federation building. Interesting to note also that that building's almost a stone's throw away from the American embassy. I was just talking to some of our CNN drivers who were coming by there, saying the entire embassy is just completely blocked off by big trucks that have been parked in the street there.
Steve, we also have a report here from Agence France Presse that part of the blockade has taken in a building that houses the offices of Western media organizations, including Reuters, BBC, CBS, New York Times. Is it possible that our continued reporting of this story may soon run into some difficulty?
Well, I'd hate to put a jinx on us even by talking about it. Those offices you mentioned are about 90 degrees across, or 180 degrees across town from us on the clock. They're on the major ring road, so they could well be blocked if that ring road is blocked, and we're sure that it is. We've just heard a little bit more gunfire. It didn't seem to be automatic gunfire this time. 1, 2, 3 shots, but not in quick succession.
We can give an example, Steve. We can roll the tape of the gunfire we heard around midnight. We have that tape up now. Let's play that so we can give our viewers an idea of what you are hearing.
Another burst of automatic weapons fire.
Yes.
Get your camera powered up. We don't need lights.
This was about an hour or so, as reported by Steve Hurst in Moscow, of a reported automatic weapons fire around the area of the Russian Parliament building, and that reported gunfire was heard within an hour or so after the imposed curfew for Moscow, which extends till 5 o'clock in the morning. Any evidence, Steve, that the crowd is dispersing because of this curfew or increasing?
Well, I think that the crowd has been dispersed somewhat because of the lateness of the night, somewhat because of the curfew, and a lot because of a major downpour that just stopped here about 30 minutes ago. But it's interesting now, we can see out across all of Moscow, and these periodic, very bright flashes of lights we see in the direction of the Kremlin are also very puzzling. And as I said, an ominous bright light shining on the back of the Russian Federation building, where most of these defenses are in place, where these protesters have been all day. Eileen was there for part of the day, and perhaps could give us a little bit of the color of what she saw during those demonstrations.
Well, basically, a lot of the people just recently were huddled around the tanks on the outer perimeter of the Russian Federation building. The tanks, again, loyal to Boris Yeltsin. They were huddled around talking to the soldiers, and also some people had actually mounted the tanks and were giving out information. That was where they were spreading the information about, which was unconfirmed, about Mr. Yazov resigning, the defense minister, and also Mr. Khrushchev, the KGB chief, all of those unconfirmed reports. But people, every time they heard such information, would give wild cheers. And recently, after hearing sporadic gunfire, we heard major roars from the crowd out there of Yeltsin, 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 and Gorbachev, Gorbachev. The crowd actually was almost jubilant when I was last there, which was just about an hour ago. And there were people building campfires, clearly settling in for the night. Some were singing a new folk song that they've just written about this, with mentioning Yanayev, saying that anyone who tried to take Russia away from them would be wiped out, and also that they would have to join hands against the troops.
All right.
And that is what they've done outside.
Excuse me a minute, Eileen. Steve, we're going to switch over to Claire Shipman, your colleague there in Moscow, who is inside the Russian Federation building. Claire, give us an idea of what it's like now.
Well, we were just standing on the roof and could see the direction from which the gunfire was coming. It was coming from just beyond the barricades in the direction of the Kremlin, down Kalinin Street. The crowds around the Parliament building have started to mass toward that area. We haven't heard any more gunfire, but it appeared to be from what some people thought to be a row of soldiers advancing in this direction, but no tanks or soldiers are visible yet, just the people massing in that direction to protect the building.
Are there alert defense people around you inside that building, Claire?
Yes, there are, and they've been running an announcement over the Russian Parliament radio system about exactly how everybody should behave and what they should do, that their goal should be to defend the building and not to initiate any violence.
And those earlier reports, and we talked about this earlier, of the building being booby-trapped with mines or explosives is incorrect? Is that what we have finally determined on that score?
Well, we have not been able to confirm that. The militia people that we have asked have said that is not the case, but so we have not been able to confirm that.
All right, Claire Shipman inside the Russian Federation building. Eileen O'Connor and Steve Hurst are across the street. They're watching what we're watching as a blockade goes up around the city center. Steve?
Lou, I would like to ask Claire if she can hear me, and if she can't, perhaps you could pass on the question for her about that light I've been commenting about. Is that coming from a source inside the barricades, or is that something from the military outside the barricades?
Did you hear that, Claire?
The gunfire seems to be coming from the military outside of the barricades, and I'm not sure I understood if you were asking about the light. That also would appear to be coming from outside of the barricades.
Claire, if you can still hear me, can you estimate how far away that light is from the building and how far away the line would be from which the gunfire is coming from the building?
We cannot see that far, unfortunately. We can't see down the street toward the Kremlin. It takes a turn, so we can only see the crowds rushing in that direction in the general light.
Any further sign of Yeltsin or any kind of movement inside the building that would indicate a change in the status of things there, Claire?
No, except that everybody is on alert in the building, and they are running an announcement that tanks are coming in and again telling everybody how to protect the building and themselves.
And these chants that we're hearing of Yeltsin, Yeltsin, are those in response to any particular action that you have seen, or can you tell from where you're standing?
They seem to be in response to the smattering of gunfire.
And one final question from me, Claire. Any idea of how many people are still around the building there?
Really none have left. I would estimate still anywhere between 10 and 15,000 remain here.
I'm going to have to interrupt you all now. Thank you. We'll be back to you shortly. Steve Hurst, Eileen O'Connor, and Claire Shipman in Moscow watching unfolding events and recent developments. A report of gunfire, that blaze of light that Steve Hurst was referring to outside the blockade of the city center. The World Today is next. There'll be further updates of what's happening in Moscow. I'm Lou Waters, and the news continues after a short break.
This has been a CNN special report. Coming up, The World Today, followed by Moneyline, here on CNN.
Do you realize just how much difference there is in life insurance rates from one insurance company to the next? For instance, if you're in good health and don't smoke cigarettes, Garden State Life Insurance may be able to save you as much as 50% off the cost of your life insurance. That's right, 30, 40, 50% off what you'd have to pay for a comparable amount of coverage elsewhere. And not just this month, but year after year for the rest of your life. Savings like that are well worth looking into. So if you need $100,000 to $1 million or more of quality term life insurance, you owe it to yourself to get the facts fast by calling now, 800-257-1257, toll free for this free information package, including a personal coverage proposal that shows you just how much your savings might be. There's no obligation, no sales pressure, and it could be a real eye-opener. For instance, as your Garden State Life representative can tell you,
if you're a healthy 40-year-old who doesn't smoke cigarettes, you may qualify for $100,000 worth of quality term life insurance at rates so low they're less than 55 cents a day.
how do we do it? First, you save because we offer this life insurance at these low rates only to people who are in good health. That cuts our risk and your premiums. Then, because this quality term life insurance is sold in amounts of at least $100,000 or more, you get the advantage of volume discounts. And it's easy to do business with Garden State Life Insurance because you deal with us directly. You're always just a phone call away. So call today, 800-257-1257, toll free, 257-1257 for your free personal coverage proposal. No obligation, no pressure. Discover how this quality term life insurance could save you as much as 50% off your premiums every year for the rest of your life. 800-257-1257, toll free. Call Garden State Life Insurance for your free information today, 257-1257.
This is CNN.
Soviet Army tanks on the move in Moscow. Gunfire rings out near the Russian Parliament building.
Did you guys...
Anti-coup demonstrators remain outside that stronghold of resistance to the Kremlin coup, defying a curfew and bracing for confrontation. From CNN, this is The World Today. I'm Catherine Crier. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go directly now to CNN's bureau chief in Moscow, Steve Hurst, for some breaking developments. Steve?
Catherine, breaking indeed they are, but sporadic at this point. For the past hour, we've been hearing gunfire in the direction of the Russian Federation building. Often it sounds like automatic weapons fire. We've been playing tape of that, and you've been hearing some of it on our microphones. What we understand is happening is that a column of tanks has apparently reached the outside layer of barricades that has been established around the Russian Federation building. And we've heard from Claire Shipman, who is inside that building, that it appears the gunfire is coming from the military across the barricade. In other words, those who are in control of the city, not the defenders. There is also now a bright light shining from outside those barricades. We have to assume that it's a spotlight brought in by the military to show them what they're doing. Also some periodic flashes of light in the direction of the Kremlin, or a little bit to the right of the Kremlin from our vantage point. It would be almost in the direction of the British Embassy. The U.S. Embassy, which is very close to the Russian Federation building, completely blocked off by big trucks parked around it. We have also heard one report that is not confirmed that some of the protesters in the city along the Ring Road, which runs not too far from the Russian Federation building, but it does encircle the entire inner city, had been attacked by demonstrators who were throwing Molotov cocktails. However, that report is not confirmed. So a busy period of time in the past hour here, but very sporadic busyness with those sporadic bursts of gunfire. Eileen?
Well, as you were looking off towards the Kremlin, back towards the Russian Federation building, there was a large flash of light. Claire Shipman said that that this light that is still glowing off to the right side of the Russian Federation building as we look at it, she says she feels it's outside the barricades, but there was a large flash just a moment ago, although no sound. So not quite clear what that is. The Russian Federation building now, all the lights inside, most of them, at least on the lower floors, are dark. Claire, can you tell us what the mood is like inside the building? Is there anything new inside?
Well, in the last 20 minutes, Eileen, the mood has gotten quite tense. They're running a continuous announcement about the approach of tanks and, you know, thanking the people here for being willing to defend the Parliament building and exactly how they should do that they should not instigate any violence, that their main goal should be to defend the building. As you said, they have requested that all lights be out, so we are in the dark right now. Again, from our view on the balcony, it seems that most of the people below have massed toward the Kalinin Street area where the gunfire was heard a short while ago.
Claire, that gunfire you heard would be in the direction of the Comic-Con building, right at the dead end of this bridge, then. Is that correct?
That's right, just beyond that barricade. Unfortunately, we cannot see down that street, and it's unclear whether there are tanks or soldiers, but most of the people watching from the roof seem to think it was a line of soldiers just down that street.
Claire, are you able to see from your vantage point any sign of tanks at all, or is it just the assumption of those who are there telling you what is happening?
We are not able to see any tanks from this vantage point. There is this constant announcement that tanks are on the way. They're running over the address system here, and that presumably is the information that the Russian government is getting from elsewhere in the city. But from this vantage point, there are no signs of tanks.
Steve, let me interrupt and ask you and Claire a question in regard to the shots that you've heard and the direction. We have a report just in from the French news agency AFP that apparently a man was shot dead and his body found near the U.S. Embassy early Wednesday, and it's 1 a.m. there. Apparently the man had been shot, but the circumstances of his death are not known. He was found shortly after shots were heard fired around the Russian Parliament building. Where would the U.S. Embassy be in relation to where you are?
Well, yes. Yes, the U.S. Embassy from the Russian Federation building is catty corner. It's probably, I don't know, a quarter of a mile distant, a very short distance. And this man, if he was found shot dead there, of course there's no confirmation of that, probably was just trying to move around, who knows. But as many gunshots as we've heard, if one of those gunshots was pointed parallel to the ground, it's liable to have hit someone. There are a lot of people there and a lot of gunshots.
So at this point, there has been no report that you've heard of either deaths or any injuries due to this gunfire?
No, we haven't heard those reports, but that's not to say that they're unfounded or untrue. It's just that we haven't heard them ourselves. And I think it's the kind of thing we're going to be hearing all night, bits and pieces of information dribbling out of this. We'll certainly have to wait and see how this develops. There's an ominous calm right now, about 15 minutes without gunfire, as far as I can tell now. Catherine?
Steve, also apparently an AP reporter is reporting he has seen tear gas. Any confirmation of that? Have you seen any?
No, we haven't seen tear gas, but we're looking ourselves from perhaps half a mile away, and it's also a very gloomy, cloudy night with a fog in the air. So I think tear gas would be hard to see from here, but you might ask Claire if there's any indication that there's tear gas.
We have no indication from here of tear gas either. It is quite foggy out here, and in the lights, it seems that it would be hard to see the tear gas.
Steve, what about various reports that we continue to receive about the members of the emergency committee, this possible case of the Coup flu going around, the illnesses, at least 3 individuals reportedly ill or resigning from the committee?
Well, I think that Coup flu is going to spread if this continues much longer to all of us journalists as well who have been standing in wet roofs. What we've heard so far are, we can confirm that Valentin Pavlov, the Prime Minister of Russia, a right-winger himself, a man who tried to stage a bit of a parliamentary coup to take away some of Gorbachev's powers through a parliamentary maneuver several weeks ago and failed, has been struck with a heart attack or a very serious case of high blood pressure. That was announced on Vremya, the evening news program, tonight. We've also heard that the Defense Minister, Dmitry Yazov, has either stepped aside or been pushed aside to give his job to his deputy, Mikhail Moiseyev, a man who was most recently in Washington to button up the negotiations on the START treaty that President Bush and former President Gorbachev signed earlier this month. There's also a rumor that Vladimir Khrushchev, the man who runs the KGB, been in that office since 1988, has stepped down. But I think aside from the one report on Soviet television about Valentin Pavlov, the prime minister, I think that the others are either true or false, but we don't have any confirmation yet at all on that. Eileen O'Connor was standing around the Russian Federation building today when a lot of those rumors began to circulate. Do you have any idea what the source of those were, Eileen?
A lot of them were some of these small independent radio stations that have sprung up, 3 from inside the Russian Federation building. Radio Echo, which was a liberal radio station in Moscow, which was shut down earlier this week, started broadcasting again, very hazy from within some homemade transmission set. But every time people heard the information, either from a transistor or from a loudspeaker system, there was a cheer rose up. Clearly, they felt that the coup was disintegrating. Claire, do you have any confirmation from inside about those reports?
Well, apparently the only one that the people inside are not able to confirm is the report about Mr. Khrushchev. Nobody seems to know anything beyond what Interfax reported on his resignation. But Andrei Fyodorov, the deputy foreign minister, did confirm that Mr. Pavlov had some sort of health problem, and the fact that Mr. Moiseyev had taken Mr. Yazov's place. So the only real question for the people inside was Mr. Khrushchev's position.
All right, Claire, let me ask you and Eileen and Steve to stand by for just a moment. We're going to take a look at some tape shot about 12 minutes ago and listen. I believe the sounds of gunfire can be heard on the tape. Let's listen.
What? Did you guys hear that automatic weapon fire? Yes, we can. Steve's with me.
Something's happening. We better get hot here.
All right, we will return to Moscow, and our coverage of the crisis in the Soviet Union continues right after this.
What is the safest sedan on the road? Ask the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. They studied 134 different car models, comparing fatality rates in highway accidents from 1984 through '88. By that standard, the safest sedan on the road is a Saab 900. One more reason why we don't make compromises. We make Saabs.
High fiber cereal, no taste.
Great tasting cereal, no fiber.
Why have one without the other? Fruit and fiber, fruit and fiber.
Delicious raisins, nuts, dates, crunchy oat clusters, and crispy high fiber bran flakes.
It's like no other. Fruit and fiber.
Great taste.
And high fiber.
Why have one without the other?
Post fruit and fiber cereal. Great taste and high fiber.
Are you hiding a problem? A nail problem? You don't want the whole world to see? Well, your nail problems are no problem with Sally Hansen. Short, stubby nails?
No problem.
Unhealthy, damaged nails and cuticles?
No problem.
Chipping, splitting nails?
No problem.
Your nail problems are no problem with Sally Hansen, the #1 name in nails.
Let's return now to Moscow, and CNN's Bureau Chief Steve Hurst and Eileen O'Connor standing by atop the CNN Bureau rooftop near the Russian Federation building. Steve, let me clarify, the gunfire that we have heard sounds sporadic. I understand these may be isolated incidents rather than some concerted movement on the part of the Soviet troops. Is that correct?
Well, I think what we have going on, Catherine, excuse me, I think what we have going on is sort of a build-up to something that may, and we hope, go away. But the gunfire has been sporadic. It's now been quiet here for about 15 minutes, I would say. No gunfire, that is. We just received back in our bureau some amateur video taken by a German chap who came running in to show it to us. This is about 900 yards from the Russian Federation building. We're told at the outs. Let's listen to the noise here. This disturbance, pro-Yeltsin demonstrators, people who had been manning the barricades, apparently attacked this column of tanks with Molotov cocktails. It's the kind of thing that could spark a bloody scene down there, because we heard on Vremya earlier tonight that these defense forces, while they didn't want to attack anyone, were in place to keep order. This is definitely not order. We won't speak about the motives of anyone or the justification of anyone, but this is certainly the kind of thing that could spark the Army to take more draconian measures.
It was interesting, though, there were loudspeakers earlier on the coming from the tanks of the pro-Yeltsin supporters, imploring those supporters to stay calm. They said, don't provoke anything. We want to show our legitimacy, and please be calm, please be quiet. We're just going to ring the Parliament building and defend it. If those were pro-Yeltsin supporters attacking the tanks, obviously that was their way of defending it, although they were implored constantly by the Russian Federation government to stay calm, to stay quiet. They were even singing a song to that effect, saying they would join hands against the troops. Steve, also, there were earlier flashes outside the Kremlin. Do you think, what did you think about those?
It's hard to tell. From the direction they're coming, it looks to me as they're coming to the right of the Kremlin, and I don't know if it's some sort of spotlight that is shining back and forth in the sky around the Kremlin, if it's some sort of gunfire. It's really impossible to tell through this fog, although having watched the Moscow night sky many, many times, it's unusual to see lights in that direction, and those flashes. It looks very similar, although it doesn't last, to this light that the military is now shining on the Russian Federation building. A gloomy night in Moscow, Catherine, a rainy night and a night full of tension as people wait to see what is going to be happening here. Thank goodness, at least for the past 20 minutes or so, there hasn't been any more of that sporadic gunfire we heard earlier.
Stephen, looking at that tape from the German amateur videotape that you were looking at, you saw one tank, maybe others in the background. Why the reaction with the Molotov cocktails? Are the individuals, the civilians outside the Parliament building now carrying arms and preparing themselves with things such as the Molotov cocktails?
Well, there was one report that some of the people inside the Parliament building had been handing out bottles filled with gasoline to make Molotov cocktails out of. That's, of course, again, an unconfirmed report. But you can imagine a crowd that at one point today reached 150 to 200,000 people, still at between 10 to 15,000 people. While maybe it seems disciplined on the outside, there is no way for anyone to control what those people do, what they have brought in with them, and what kind of arms they might have come equipped with. It seems fairly logical to me, if someone knew that they were going to defend a building against a city full of tanks, that they might have thought before they went to do that to bring something with them to defend themselves with. But again, we're it's purest speculation as to what is really going on there. I can see some smoke in the air now above the right-hand corner of the Russian Parliament building, illuminated by that bright light from the military, just floating out of view now. That may have been what was left from that attack on that tank column. Steve Hurst for Eileen O'Connor, reporting live from Moscow.
Thank you, Steve. Well, the picture is less clear outside Moscow, but we can report these events. The Soviet Union's second city, Leningrad, is apparently supporting the defiant stance of Russian President Boris Yeltsin. An estimated 200,000 people packed into Leningrad's Winter Square to rally behind that city's reformist mayor. The city council has declared the coup committee's declarations null and void in Leningrad. The breakaway Baltics have borne the brunt of the military crackdown, with blockades reported in Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. Soviet troops today seized control of broadcast studios in Latvia. Lithuania is reportedly quiet now after tanks rolled into the republic Monday night. There is a report that Soviet troops have joined with groups of civilians and are preparing to overthrow the republic's government. In Tallinn, Estonia, more than 100 light armored vehicles are in the city, but have so far taken no action. In Finland, Estonia's foreign minister said the republic would declare independence from the Soviet Union. All three Baltic republics are reportedly setting up governments in exile. In Kiev, thousands of Ukrainians rallied against the coup on Monday. They shouted, "Out with the junta." Today, leaders of the Ukrainian parliament rejected the decrees of the new Kremlin leadership. And elsewhere, 400,000 people demonstrated in the Republic of Moldavia against the coup. The leader of Kazakhstan, not known as a political radical, said the decisions of the coup committee were illegal, and he demanded to hear from Mikhail Gorbachev. Coal miners in Siberia have complied with Boris Yeltsin's call for a general strike, and outside the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakian troops are gathering on the Soviet border. The CTK news agency reports the Prague government is sending 6,000 soldiers to the border. It was 23 years ago today when the Warsaw Pact forces rolled into Prague, turning back the reforms of the Prague Spring. And when the world today continues, we'll have a live report from the Pentagon and an update from the White House.
Is this you? Spend an hour washing your car every week, getting all messed up when you could be having fun? Or maybe you spend $6 at the car wash. Either way, 2 days later, it looks like it was never washed. Shouldn't there be a way to keep your car looking great all the time? Now there is. Finally, you can stop washing your car and start dusting it with the amazing duster. In seconds, your car will look like it was just washed.
It was guaranteed, so I tried it. And you know, it really does work like magic.
And your duster will last for years. It was originally developed for car buffs to keep their show cars looking new. See, its specially treated fibers lift the dust off without a scratch, so it's guaranteed safe for even the most delicate paint jobs. Look at that shine.
With this expensive investment to protect, I'd rather use my amazing duster than wash any day.
Because it's so easy to use, you'll want one for every car in your family. And they make great gifts, too.
My husband bought me this amazing duster. Now I wouldn't be without it.
It's the best present my kids have ever given me.
Tired of washing, wasting time, money, and water?
It really is faster than washing.
I'd never be without mine again.
Call this number and start dusting the magic way today. It's available only through this special TV offer. Thousands have been sold for $29.95. But call now, take advantage of this special offer, and pay only $19.95. That's right, you'll save $10. Order now, and you'll also get this handsome carrying case worth $5 absolutely free. That's a $35 value for only $19.95. So call this number and forget about washing your car. Or send $19.95 plus $3.95 shipping and handling to California Car Duster, 15430 Cabrito Road, Van Nuys, California, 91406. But to start dusting your car even sooner, call this number now. Have your credit card ready. Our operators are standing by.
Once word of the Soviet coup broke, U.S. intelligence agencies stepped up their efforts to gather data on the unfolding crisis. Of particular interest, of course, has been the movement of Soviet troops. CNN military affairs correspondent Wolf Blitzer has the latest assessment from the Pentagon.
U.S. officials say the backbone of the Soviet military presence in and around Moscow consists of the Tula Quick Reaction Division, the Taman Mechanized Infantry Division, and a separate heavy tank division. Those three divisions are normally based in Moscow, and U.S. intelligence has confirmed reports that some troops from the Tula and Taman divisions have pledged loyalty to Russian Republic President Boris Yeltsin. If force is ordered by the new hardline Soviet leadership, U.S. officials say those divisions would be backed up by other highly disciplined armed elements, including elite airborne units from the regular Army, KGB police, and Ministry of Interior Black Beret militia.
Black Berets are clearly the most disciplined and reliable politically. They've been developed in the last 2 or 3 years, specifically to raise both the level of competence in crowd control and violence and reliability.
Experts say many of the troops will be non-ethnic Russians from the Central Asian republics, most of whom do not even speak Russian.
You don't want to order troops to shoot their cousins because the troops might turn around and turn their guns against those who gave the orders.
Other specialists agree that the longer Yeltsin can remain in power, the more difficult a Soviet military response will become.
I think the cohesion of the Soviet military, which is open to question, is directly proportionate to the volatility of the resistance that's put up against them.
President Bush says he does not want to escalate the crisis by ordering any precipitous military move.
This isn't a time to threaten militarily or to move forces around just to show machoism. That's not what's called for here.
Pentagon officials say they cannot confirm reports that the Soviet defense minister, Dmitry Yazov, and the head of the KGB, Vladimir Khrushchev, have resigned. But they strongly suspect that Yazov is out, perhaps because he was not strong enough. Officials say they're not sure where General Mikhail Moiseev stands. He's next in line. He's the chief of the general staff and supposedly would replace Yazov if Yazov is in fact out. Moiseev was reportedly out of town on Sunday when the coup took place, and it was only a few weeks ago that Moiseev hosted a visit by the U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell. Pentagon officials acknowledge they're having a very tough time monitoring all of these dramatic developments. Said one official, the train is moving so fast, no one is keeping up. Catherine?
Yes, well, if you stand by just a second, I just wanted to let the viewers know that film that you are seeing are ambulances there in the streets of Moscow. We've got live pictures of the ambulances there in the street. And Wolf, let me ask you a question. There at the Pentagon, what about Defense Secretary Dick Cheney, General Colin Powell? What are they doing right now?
Both men are here in the building. The Secretary of Defense, as you know, cut short a fishing vacation in Canada. He returned to Washington last night. He is going to remain, his aides tell us, he's going to remain here at the Pentagon. He's not going to resume his vacation, given the dramatic developments unfolding in the Soviet Union. General Colin Powell is here for the time being. Unclear whether he will continue on with a scheduled vacation, but for the time being, he also remains in Washington.
Wolf Blitzer at the Pentagon, thank you for that update. And we'll have more information. We'll have a report from the White House and, of course, more live reports from Moscow right after this.
When you want to watch the news, you turn to CNN. But did you know we're much more?
Like coverage of the world's financial markets.
Passion from Paris to New York.
All the sports, scores, and highlights.
Debate from a different perspective.
The world's weather.
Talk that will thrill you. Tantalizing cuisine.
The pros and the cons.
Advice you can count on. Showbiz from Hollywood to Broadway.
CNN, we're the news you need and much more.
The first time I switched pain relievers, it was from aspirin to Tylenol. Then recently, I switched again, from Tylenol acetaminophen to Advil. You see, I got these really pounding headaches, and I found Tylenol didn't always get rid of all the pain. So I tried Advil and found that for my really tough headaches, 2 Advil worked better than 2 extra-strength Tylenol tablets, better than extra-strength Tylenol caplets, better than Tylenol gel caps. For my tough headaches, Advil just works better. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
They really want me to take that job in Chicago.
When the moment really matters, there's no better card than MasterCard. With payment flexibility and nearly 3 times the acceptance of American Express. So you can buy what you want, when you want. For the way we really live.
I've been thinking. Please stay.
MasterCard. Master the moment.
U.S. President George Bush talked on the phone with Boris Yeltsin Tuesday, and senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer reports Mr. Bush voiced support for Mr. Yeltsin's effort to oppose the coup in Moscow.
Boris Yeltsin, in calls to President Bush and British Prime Minister Major, voiced concern about the tanks in the streets of Moscow. According to a U.S. official, both Bush and Major sensed Yeltsin expected military action.
He wants to see the rights of the republics, and he wants to see President Gorbachev restored to power. And he didn't say he's afraid. He's a very courageous man. And he says he's convinced that the people will stand with him, and well, they should.
Bush could not get through to ousted Soviet President Gorbachev.
I've twice tried to reach him by phone, including within the last hour, but have so far been unsuccessful.
The president had returned to Washington to swear in Robert Strauss as ambassador to the Soviet Union and dispatch him immediately to Moscow. Strauss was originally picked as the man who could help Gorbachev straighten out the Soviet economy.
Although circumstances have changed, as I've said, it seems to me that my mission remains basically the same, and that is to go to Moscow, to speak very clearly, speak very plainly, and if necessary with undiplomatic candor from time to time.
Strauss will not present his diplomatic credentials to or meet with acting Soviet President Gennady Yanayev.
Well, we have no plans on that, and what we don't want to do is do anything that legitimizes this current regime or legitimizes what is clearly an illegal coup.
At the Rose Garden news conference, Bush defended the way he has dealt with Gorbachev, who may once have been a Kremlin dictator, but is now seen here as a Democrat.
You get hit from the left saying if you'd written out a better check, this wouldn't have happened, and I don't believe that for one single minute. And you get hit on the other side by people that are suggesting that if we hadn't been supportive of the duly constituted president of the Soviet Union, that things would have gone more swimmingly for democracy. I reject that.
Bush also defended going back to his Kennebunkport vacation, saying he wouldn't solve the Soviet crisis sitting around the Oval Office.
It's going to be different now than it's been, maybe a little more like last year. What is it about August?
President Bush says he can monitor Moscow from Maine and expects to step up diplomatic activity there. The president says people are looking to the U.S. for leadership, perhaps disproportionately. Charles Bierbauer, CNN, the White House.
We'll return to Moscow for a live report, and we have some new information from CNN's Steve Emerson of our Special Assignment Unit when The World Today continues.
The World Today continues, followed by Moneyline, next on CNN.
Great legs.
Thank you.
How do you get them?
I used to do aerobics till I dropped. Then I found Thighmaster. Every single time you squeeze Thighmaster, you strengthen and tone right where you need it. So it's easy to squeeze your way to shapely hips and thighs.
I thought I'd never fit into these jeans again. Thank you, Thighmaster.
I recommend it and use it.
The secret to shapely thighs is exercising these muscles with just the right resistance. This balanced resistance coil is designed to give you results quickly and comfortably. Want to tone your upper chest and arms? Thighmaster will give you excellent results. Thighmaster. We may not have been born with great legs, but now we can look like we were.
To order your Thighmaster, call 1-800-257-1257. Have your credit card ready or send check or money order for $19.95 plus $4.50 for shipping and handling to this address. No CODs, please. If you're not fully satisfied, return it in 30 days for your money back. Plus, if you call right now, we'll also send you Suzanne's Slender for Life plan absolutely free. Thighmaster is not available in stores, so act right now.
This is CNN.
We have some new information for you now. Stephen Emerson of CNN Special Assignment Unit has been talking with sources in the State Department and the U.S. intelligence community. Steve joins us in our Washington bureau. Steve, who are the people you've been speaking with? What are they telling you?
Well, I've been speaking to people in the State Department and in the intelligence community, and basically they say that based on the reports they've seen so far, and it's obviously they're involved in reading tea leaves, the coup has stalled, and that they are in the process of watching its unraveling at this point. And there could be violent outbursts until the spasms are reached. But right now, the coup is definitely in the middle of some type of unraveling.
What indications are your sources looking to determine this unraveling?
Well, right now, they're looking at some incredibly strong indications that the people who took over the Soviet Union were not prepared to really take it over. Estonia now is freely broadcasting. Newspapers have not been shut down. Leningrad is fully controlled by the mayor of the city. International broadcasts coming into the Soviet Union and going out have not been shut down. And interestingly enough, CNN, which is the prime transmission service in and out of the Soviet Union, has not been shut down either. So these are all basic indications showing that the coup has not gone well and that right now it has stalled and is in the middle of some type of unraveling.
Well, if the coup is coming apart, what kind of timetable are your sources indicating?
It's a good question. It's almost impossible to tell. I mean, no one can get inside the heads of those on the committee. I neglected to say that 2 of the 8 initial people on the committee leading the coup have resigned for, quote, health reasons, and there's a report that the 3rd person has also resigned. If another person goes, Boris Pugo, who is the interior minister, then officials will really have confirmation that the coup is beginning to reverse itself. And that remains to be seen. This could take days, it could take weeks.
What about the report that we've been hearing throughout the day that Gorbachev was arrested this morning in the Crimea? Any word on that?
Well, that's an interesting report. There has been no independent verification of that report. However, based on incoming cable traffic to the United States, one report, reliable report, says that Gorbachev is being held, quote, incommunicado in Crimea. Now, if Gorbachev is not allowed to talk to the Soviet people, that means one thing, probably that the coup is going to continue spitting itself out until hardliners take over. If he's allowed to talk to the people, that'll be a major indication that the coup will essentially have spun out and that the hardliners who were in the initial coup will have lost out.
Steve, as the U.S. officials follow what's unfolding, what are they looking for specifically, say, among the members of the Emergency Committee?
Well, you know, at this point, they're looking for any indication that would tip their hand. The fact that 2 of the 8 have resigned for health reasons, that a 3rd, Khrushchev, the head of the KGB, is likely to have resigned, although they cannot confirm that. The fact is that no one is really speaking out at this point. They have not heard anything from Boris Pugo. So that's also an indication that something may be amiss. Whether, in fact, the communications in and out of Moscow, in and out of the Soviet Union are stopped, that'll be a very strong telling point. And a 3rd telling point is the fact that there have been reports that 2 of 3 divisions within Moscow have sworn their allegiance, military divisions, have sworn their allegiance to Boris Yeltsin. Again, a striking indication that the coup has not taken shape the way the initial envisioners of the coup thought it would.
Steve Emerson bringing us up to date on word from sources in the State Department and the U.S. intelligence community. Thanks for the report. Let's go back to Moscow now and CNN's Bureau Chief Steve Hurst. Steve?
Catherine, varying reports on casualties now coming out. We showed some video earlier in this broadcast of protesters attacking a line of tanks with Molotov cocktails. We heard from the German amateur photographer who took those pictures and brought them to us that he saw one person have their head blown away by fire from the tank forces, and he saw others fleeing and bleeding. The Associated Press is reporting that 2 people have died. The Reuters news agency reporting that 3 have died. From our vantage point, of course, we are unable to see anything now except smoke rising from apparently that attack on those tanks, the Molotov cocktails thrown at the tanks when the protesters charged the column of tanks. No gunfire now for probably 30 minutes in the region. A good sign or not. I was just listening to suggestions that the coup is unraveling. I think that if that is indeed the case, there's going to be a pretty nasty death rattle involved here, because it seems to me the tank forces, the armored personnel carriers, the men, the paratroopers on foot, are spread out under different commanders and without any central command. It could become even more bloody than if there was a central command, because I think as protests continue to grow, if we see more attacks like these pictures show, these people will begin operating independently and operating to preserve themselves. Catherine?
Alan, your recommendations for the site of the new plant.
For the tax incentives and the state financial assistance programs, Kentucky.
Jim?
In education, the reform program setting the trend nationally is in Kentucky.
Carol?
Kentucky's workforce ranks as one of the best in productivity.
That was easy.
Every day, more companies realize what Kentucky has to offer. Give us a call and see what we can do for you.
I love you, little Jenny Catherine. I want to tell you something very, very important. Daddy got a raise. That means I can buy you a sandbox, a sliding board. What do you think? You think we should put some of it away? What do you know about the stock market? I love you, little Jenny Catherine. Guess what? Daddy got a raise.
What do we have here? Acute lower abdominal pain.
I don't see any alternative.
I don't either. We have to go in. Have we gotten the parents yet?
I have them on the phone, Doctor. They're out of the country.
Fax them a consent form, stat.
That's the only thing we're waiting on.
I know it.
Okay. I've got it.
Any minute now.
Doctor, I've got the parents' signatures.
Excellent. Here we go.
Dex Facsimile, one of a wide range of business communication solutions from Fujitsu, the global computer and communications company.
I think I'll make fresh dressing.
Good seasons?
Mm-hmm.
Which oil?
Pick a light one.
Dressing's great.
Good seasons, you make it fresh, you make it best.
Tonight, reaction to Russia's political power play. What's next in the Soviet Union struggle? A view of the shakeup from former Senator Gary Hart. Tonight, Larry King Live, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Scandal-tainted Solomon Brothers suffered another blow today. The nation's largest state pension fund suspended its business with the troubled Wall Street giant. The California State Fund says it could not turn its back on Solomon's illegal activity. Casey Wyan has the story.
The decision by the California Public Employees Retirement System to pull its government bond business from Solomon Brothers will deprive Solomon of $765 million in annual business. While CalPERS isn't pulling all of its money from Solomon, the fund's chief investment officer says in a statement its board is outraged at the illegal activities of the firm, but is encouraged by recent management changes made to restore customer confidence. The California Fund is the largest of several big investors suspending business from Solomon since it admitted rigging government bond auctions 11 days ago, and others may follow. Standard & Poor's has Solomon on credit watch, but says the loss of CalPERS isn't enough to force a lower debt rating.
The most immediate problem they face is obviously the threat of a liquidity crisis in terms of people being unwilling to basically lend money to the firm. It's our assessment at this point in time that in the near term that's manageable.
Manageable because Solomon Brothers earned $450 million in the first half of the year, and because some customers, including the nation's largest pension fund, are sticking by Solomon for now. But its problems are snowballing. Solomon's stock has tumbled almost 30% since the scandal broke, slashing the firm's market value by $1 billion. The New York Stock Exchange is joining the list of authorities investigating the firm, and investors have now filed 9 class action lawsuits against Solomon and its former top officers. Analysts say Solomon Brothers is strong enough to survive fines and legal damages of $1 billion or more. But the defection of more big customers could cripple the scandal-plagued securities firm. Casey Wyan, CNN Business News, New York.
Well, investor confidence did return to the market, albeit in small measure. The Dow today finished the session up 15.66. The Dow tonight at 2,913.69. Volume almost 185 million shares traded, advancing issues beating out decliners by a 2-to-1 margin. The composite index rose 1.43, the S&P 500 up 2.96. The Dow Transportations lost 5.99, while the utilities recovered 2 points.
The NASDAQ Composite Index moving up 4.41, rebounding a bit from yesterday's sharp drop. Volume better than 145 million shares. And on the American Exchange, the Composite Index closed at 360.30, a gain of 1.39 on almost 11.5 million shares of volume. Tonight's Moneyline movers, UAL, the parent of United Airlines, dropping $5 a share. Airline stocks very weak today following a round of fare cuts by all major carriers. Another big gain for McDonnell Douglas stock. It moved up 4 1/4 as the situation in the Soviet Union becomes increasingly uncertain. Well, shares of Deere fell 2 5/8, that on poor earnings performance. Even the Terminator couldn't help Carolco Pictures stock. Despite producing the summer's biggest movie, Carolco's second quarter earnings were disappointing, and its stock today dropped by 3/8. Plains Resources, the most active issue on the American Stock Exchange today, rose 6 1/4, saying it found a huge natural gas field off the Los Angeles coastline. The most active issue on the big board today, H.J. Heinz, rising 1/4 point. A lot of talk in the market that Heinz is a takeover target, perhaps of Philip Morris. All of it, perhaps. And among widely held issues, Eastman Kodak picking up 5/8, IBM, Time Warner, each moving up 3/4. DuPont rose $1 a share. All of those stocks down more than $1 yesterday. But Disney, its slide continued, off 5/8 today, down $4 a share so far this week. And New York real estate developer Peter Calico today filed for personal bankruptcy protection. Calico is the latest victim of New York's real estate slump. Calico owns the New York Post, but insists the newspaper will not be affected by his bankruptcy. Calico defaulted on a $25 million personal loan from European American Bank. And topping the list of Calico's unsecured creditors, Bankers Trust, which he owes $45 million. And coming up next here on Moneyline, reforms for a battered economy now on hold, the world awaiting the future of the Soviet Union. Stay with us.
Once, a herd of iron horses roamed these canyons. One thoroughbred evolved, Norfolk Southern. With a strong, steady track record and innovations in trains, trucks, and distribution systems, it continues to capture new markets. And as Norfolk Southern moves on to new destinations, some very smart investors are on board.
Recently, Stouffer Hotels hosted the chairman of Dow Jones, held a meeting for the president of AT&T, planned a banquet for the CEO of Avis, and welcomed lots of other important presidents too. In fact, maybe the reason we're one of America's top-rated luxury hotels is that our presidential suites are so often filled with presidents. Stouffer Hotels and Resorts. You can depend on our good name.
If your idea of savings is to put your money in a bank, wake up to the 1990s and the Dreyfus 100% U.S. Treasury Money Market Fund. The one and only 100% invested in U.S. Treasuries. Treasuries, the safest investment of all. Now, consider income. If you pay state and local taxes on your bank income, you don't with Dreyfus 100% U.S. Treasury. This unique fund delivered income higher, considerably higher than bank money market accounts, even higher in a state with income tax. Call 1-800-345-8600 for today's yield, a prospectus. Checking? Oh, free checking. This is Dreyfus. Save a better way with Uncle Sam and the only Treasury money fund free of state and local tax in 49 states. Sorry, Tennessee. Call 1-800-345-8600 and say it's Dreyfus U.S. for us.
News,
debate,
sports, weather,
advice,
pros, cons,
fashion,
talk, finance,
showbiz,
tantalizing cuisine. CNN, we're the news you need and much more.
Whether the Soviet coup succeeds or fails, there is only one outcome for the Soviet people. Myron Kandel has a few thoughts for us tonight. Myron?
Lou, President Bush and President Reagan before him held out the hand of friendship to Mikhail Gorbachev and the Soviet people. Cold War tensions faded, Eastern Europe was freed from communist domination, and the world looked forward to superpower peace and cooperation. The Soviet economy, however, fell into shambles despite Gorbachev's efforts at reform and Western pledges of assistance. The evil empire, armed though it was with military power, turned out to be an economic house of cards. But the leaders of the coup that ousted Gorbachev must realize that their action, if it stands, will make their country even more of an economic cripple as well as an international pariah. If the hardliners now in charge try to reverse the recent moves toward open markets and less central control, the Soviet people, already grumbling under Gorbachev, will become even more resentful. Production would fall even more, food and consumer goods would become even scarcer, lines even longer, the lives of the people even more difficult. However, the direct impact on Western economies, particularly that of the United States, would be minimal. The psychological impact could be greater, but that would depend on the extent of the internal Soviet turmoil. Today, for example, the world watched anxiously and continues to do so as tanks move toward the Russian parliament building. But the markets refused to panic, and stocks around the world regained part of yesterday's losses. Where they go from here depends on what happens this fateful night in Moscow. Lou?
Myron, thank you. And that is Moneyline for this Thursday evening. We thank you for joining us. I'm Lou Dobbs. Good night from New York. And here is Michael Kinsley to tell us what's ahead on Crossfire. Michael?
Lou, we'll be chewing over today's events in the Soviet Union and asking whether the coup is going to succeed, but we're also going to back up a bit and talk about whether the United States could have done more to save Mikhail Gorbachev in the first place. That's next on Crossfire.
Why does one person excel above all others? Is it motivation, raw talent, desire? Is it personal satisfaction, intelligence, luck? There's no magic formula, and there's really no secret. But there is Soloflex. Because Soloflex is designed and engineered with one thing in mind, your body's needs. And we've created the finest, most complete, and simplest system to attain those needs. With Soloflex, the reward is yours. For a free brochure, call anytime.
This is CNN.
Crossfire is just ahead on CNN. I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington with an update on events in the Soviet Union. It is 2:30 Wednesday morning in Moscow. At least 2 people are reported to have been shot dead near the Russian Republic Parliament. That's where thousands of anti-coup civilians and troops are manning barricades against a feared military advance. People said to be pro-Yeltsin activists have been attacking armored vehicles with Molotov cocktails. Also, the anti-coup station Moscow Echo is reporting 1 person run over and killed by a tank, but that information is unconfirmed. This is what it sounded like as the gunfire was heard about 2 hours ago. The first burst came at around midnight Moscow time, 1 hour after a curfew took effect. but details are sketchy as to who fired the shots or the circumstances. The Russian parliament is said to be meeting inside the building. A Russian military official says Republic President Boris Yeltsin is refusing to leave. Ambulances drove through a crowd near the building about an hour ago. Repeating, at least 2 people are reported shot dead near the parliament, where thousands of people are uniting against the coup. I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington. I'll return with a 1-hour special report on the Soviet crisis at the top of the hour. Now, Crossfire.
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Pat Buchanan. Tonight, a Soviet standoff. In the Crossfire, former National Security Council staff member Roger Robinson and Martin Walker, Washington bureau chief for the Manchester Guardian.
Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. By the hundreds of thousands, the peoples of the Soviet Union are defying the coup d'etat that drove Mikhail Gorbachev from power. In Moscow, Boris Yeltsin, voice and leader of the resistance, remains inside the Russian parliament, and there is concern the junta will order a storming of the building before daybreak. Another question is now being raised in the West. Did the Western allies do all they could have done or should have done to save Mikhail Gorbachev? Tonight, who lost Gorbachev? Michael?
Roger, here's George Bush today on the question of who lost Gorbachev. Well, I guess
you get hit from the left saying if you'd written out a better check, this wouldn't have happened, and I don't believe that for 1 single minute. And you get hit on the other side by people that are suggesting that if we hadn't been supportive of the duly constituted president of the Soviet Union, that things would have gone more swimmingly for democracy. I reject that. I don't believe there's any fact in that, and if there were, why was Boris Yeltsin, who was elected overwhelmingly, as supportive as he was and continues to be of Mr. Gorbachev?
Now, Roger, obviously George Bush doesn't think that he lost Gorbachev, but he does think that Gorbachev's loss is a loss for the world. Boris Yeltsin thinks so. Margaret Thatcher thinks so. Ronald Reagan thinks so. Do you not think so?
Well, I happen to be partial toward the democratic mandate that's enjoyed by Boris Yeltsin, not Mr. Gorbachev. He is, as the Wall Street Journal, I think, put it very well today in an editorial, a bridge to nowhere, a man who was trying to straddle central power and democracy, and more times than I was ever comfortable with, sided with the preservation of essentially the central system.
But you're not saying, are you, that the world is not worse off today than it was 2 days ago?
No, I'm not at all pleased about the circumstances we find ourselves in. Don't
you do have a little smirk on your face.
Well, let's be clear. The fact is that not only did we not, we didn't write too big a check. We wrote more checks than were warranted. Mr. Gorbachev had never engaged in a track record of genuine systemic economic and political reform, and I think that's got to concern us.
Well, look, isn't it relevant to ask, since you even concede that this is an undesirable development, that the past couple of days, isn't it relevant to ask, isn't there anything the West could have done to have prevented this development? And that is the who lost Gorbachev question.
Well, my point is that we had an overinvestment in Mr. Gorbachev. We played the personal diplomacy game too long. And it seems to me if we had worked with the reformist republics and true democratic forces in the Soviet Union, we wouldn't be in the perhaps at least in the unsavory position we find ourselves in now.
Martin, isn't that correct? It seems, wasn't Gorbachev in reality something of a political corpse? And your suggestion that the economic summit should have rushed billions of dollars there in order to persuade these thugs that threw him out that they shouldn't throw him out, wouldn't that have been an investment that would have been lost forever?
I think that Gorbachev's political maneuvering, his tacking to left and right over the past year, is beginning now to look in a very different light, because it's clear that what Gorbachev did, in effect, was to buy time for this astonishing phenomenon we're seeing now, this surge of popular resistance to the coup. I think those heirs of Gorbachev on the streets of Moscow tonight are the real justification of the kind of policies he's been carrying out.
But what you are saying, I think, is not different from what I would say, which is that Gorbachev may have been a pivotal figure in 1985, but he had become a transitional figure. He's going to nowhere, a bridge to nowhere. Sooner or later, the great collision is going to occur between Yeltsin, the democratic forces, and the republics that want freedom, and these characters that who are seeing everything slip away, and that was inevitable, was it not?
Gorbachev bought the time for democracy to sink its roots, and if the ghost of the Cold War is tonight clambering out of its grave, it's because the West didn't take the opportunity to stick a stake through its heart when it had the chance at the G7 summit in London this summer.
All right, you say we should have stuck a golden stake through the heart of the Cold War by putting how many billions behind this individual who had a couple of weeks left?
I'm saying we should have laid out the deal on the table and said, look, Mr. Gorbachev, in return for the following: a massive reduction in Soviet defense spending, a massive change in your laws to enable capitalism, to enable free enterprise to thrive. This money is going to be on the table. We made the most lukewarm of offerings.
Excuse me, Martin, are you suggesting that the KGB head who's involved here, the Interior Minister who's involved here, and the military who are involved here, if we'd only bribed them with enough money, they would have given up all their power and reduced their military?
No, Pat, that's not the kind of people we've got to convince. The people we've got to convince that the West is serious about supporting Soviet democracy aren't those people in the Kremlin tonight. They're the people who are working in the defense industries in Leningrad. Their sons, their brothers, who are the conscripts in the army. They're the ones we've got to convince.
Let me and Roger back in here. Now, Roger, even Pat agrees with the general consensus that and you agree too probably, that what Gorbachev has been doing for the past few years is bobbing and weaving, pandering a little bit to the right, pandering a little bit to the left. He managed to pull this off for 6 years before Pat was ready to throw him on the dust heap of history. Are you so confident that anyone could have done better, that your God, Boris Yeltsin, could have done better if we had thrown all our weight behind Yeltsin and Yeltsin had somehow taken charge 3 or 4 years ago?
Look, I believe that Gorbachev was never genuinely committed to the full transformation of the Soviet Union into a democracy and free market. Let's start there.
What could he have done differently if he had been? He did a very skillful balancing act. Well, that's the point. This coup might have happened 2 years earlier if someone had moved faster than Gorbachev.
But let me get into that. In virtually this time frame last year, in October 1990, we faced a juncture where Gorbachev had the opportunity, indeed committed to the world, to grab the nettle on systemic change. He had the 500-day plan laid out that would have had most of the genuine economic prescriptions needed, but he abandoned it as soon as he caucused with his traditional constituencies in the KGB, the Communist Party, and the military.
When he did that, everyone said he's needlessly afraid of a right-wing coup. It doesn't look like he was needlessly afraid. Maybe he was very sensibly afraid of a right-wing coup. He bobbed to the right. This spring and summer, he bobbed back to the left, and there was a right-wing coup. It seems to me he should be given more respect in hindsight.
We're hearing tonight from a constituency that's always been doubtful about the genuineness of perestroika. Now, I spent 4 years in Moscow as a correspondent when that was unfolding, and I watched the skill with which Gorbachev steadily opened up the horizons of democratic possibility.
Martin, let's concede your points, 85, 86, 87. You even seem to be saying the same thing we're saying, which is that this collision between these forces, basically all democratic, private property freedom versus the old line communists, was going to come. Let's concede the point that Gorbachev flipping back and forth maybe gave time for the forces of freedom to strengthen. Wasn't it inevitable that it was going to come anyway, in which case you don't give $10 billion to a corpse?
The point is, it was going to come anyway. What Gorbachev has done is held off that moment, but never at any time did the West come to him and say, look, the rest of the world is so much on your side that in order to convince the doubters, not in the Politburo, but the doubters in the factories, in the ranks of the army, that the West really is genuine, here is the deal. Support in return for change.
Okay, I got to cut you off there, Roger. We'll come back to you. We'll also come back after this break with CNN correspondent Steve Hurst in Moscow to bring us up to date on these fast-moving developments.
In today's business world, maintaining control is essential. And when it comes to controlling air travel costs, there's one system that's only for air travel. Has no annual fees, no credit limits, offers automatic insurance, and customized billing. The Air Travel Card Payment System, your corporate control tower. Call 1-800-854-9600. It's the smartest route.